In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can add a scrollable subform to an existing 4D form to present data from a collection or entity selection. This is a useful technique when the data is too varied for a list box, or you simply want a richer presentation. Best of all, it's not as difficult as you might think. I'm Kirk Brooks. I'm using 4D 20.6 LTS in project mode. The basic strategy involves three forms. The parent form is the one you probably already have. It's the one you want the scrolling list to appear on. The container form has one purpose, and that is to be the object all the subforms appear in. The detail form is the form for each element of data. The data can be an entity selection or a collection. The collection can even contain different data types, which means you could use different detail forms depending on the type of data, or different forms depending on what the form needs to convey. If the data is all the same, or you use just one detail form for everything, the task is simpler. When you have multiple data types or multiple forms, then you will want to prepare the data ahead of time. This usually means looping through it and wrapping each element in an object and adding some metadata, such as the form to use. Now let's tackle what might be the trickiest part of this implementation, correctly setting up the relationships between the three forms. The key challenge lies in understanding the difference between the logical relationship of the forms and their actual execution order. As you see in the diagram, logically we can think of the form hierarchy from top to bottom. Parent form at the top, container form in the middle, and the detail form or forms at the bottom. However, 4D's actual execution order for nested subforms works in reverse. The detail forms onload events all fire first, then the container forms onload event, and finally the parent form's onload event runs last. This creates a challenge. We need our data to be available to the nested forms, but the parent form hasn't finished setting it up when the nested forms start loading. To solve this, 3 steps. 1. Leave the parent's subform unassigned. By not assigning the container form to the subform object, there are no nested subforms when the parent form loads, so the parent form's onload event fires first. Second, but do assign the details form to the container. Unless you plan on using different forms for each element, you can save some work by assigning the detail form to the container subform. And third, the parent form makes the dynamic connection. During the parent form's onload event, it connects everything together after the data is prepared. This approach creates what I call just-in-time connection between the forms. When the parent form's onload event fires, it is creating the data. The data references are being defined in the form definitions between the container and detail forms. The parent form connects to the container form through object set subform. And after all that is done, the container and detail forms begin their onload sequences. As we run the demo, you see how this ensures all forms have access to the data they need. Without this specific setup, you'd find the nested forms trying to access data that doesn't exist yet. And by the way, this approach can be used anytime you have nested subforms. It's not specific to this example. Now that we understand how the forms connect, let's tackle how to create multiple instances of the detail form, one for each item of the data collection. You may think we could simply use object duplicate for this, but there's a limitation. This will duplicate the data source of the original object. If we try to use object set data source to change it to the new reference, we get an error because this command was designed to work with classic 4D form objects. It does not work with object references and does not work with ORDA. Since our technique relies on maintaining proper data references, we need a more sophisticated approach. The solution is to dynamically create a new form definition for the container form. This is why I kept that container form simple. It's easy to add the subform objects we need. First, I need to make the container form definition accessible. I'll copy the entire container form folder into the resources folder of my project. Now I can retrieve and parse the container form's definition. Then I can extract the existing subform object. This is what I'm going to duplicate for the new subforms. I specify the name of the detail form to use. You can ignore this if you are using the same detail form for all the items. Now comes the key part. I loop through the data collection. I calculate the new position based on the last subform. I just need the top coordinate, as the width, height, and left side are the same for all the others. I use OB_copy to create a new object based on the last subform object. Then I set the new data source reference. I set the detail form name, and then I add it to the page objects with a unique name. Finally, I execute set subform and install the form definition I just built. Notice the crucial parts of this process: copying the form definition to resources so that we can access it in code, using OB_copy to create independent copies of the subform object, precisely calculating the vertical position for each new subform, setting the data source property to reference the correct item in the collection, and then assigning each subform to the form definition with a unique name. When we run this code, the container form fills with the properly positioned detail forms, each displaying the correct data in the collection. The result is a clean, scrollable list that maintains all the proper object references. The beauty of this approach is its flexibility. You could easily modify it to use different detail forms based on data type, create horizontal or grid layouts, or handle complex nested data structures. So there you have it. With less than 36 lines of code, you can add a subform populated with collection-based data displayed through a scrolling list of subforms using any number of different detail forms. I hope you found this useful. If so, leave a comment, leave some questions, and I'll see you in the next one.